Well, you want to get us kicked off, Aaron?
Yes, here's good morning to everybody. Here's a little kind of snapshot of what we're going to be talking about this morning. Of course, we're exploring the Asking Academy, but we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Jenna Connors. Jenna, if you want to wave, yeah, you wave so everyone knows who you are if they're watching. But we're gonna take some time to get to know Jenna, and then we're gonna have a brief overview of the Asking Academy, and we're gonna hear from Jenna some of her big takeaways, and we'll be talking about what is next. In fact, I think Ked's gonna give everyone a couple nuggets from the Asking Academy, what the experience would be like, and some freebies that we'll throw out, even though today is not an official Asking Academy summit, but we'll go ahead and share that with you. So let's go to the next slide. Today is all about Jenna. So Jenna, can you tell us just a little bit about who you are? You have some friends on the call already, but not everyone knows you. So tell us a little bit about you and how you got connected with the Asking Academy.
Sure. So good morning, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. My name is Jenna Connors. I live in a small town north of Boston. It's called Georgetown, Massachusetts. We're huge Celtics fans. We're huge Patriots fans. We're huge Bruins fans, and we are
Go Chiefs.
Sox fans. I just had to throw it out there. I'm married and I have two children. My daughter is named Riley and she just turned 13. And my son is named Parker and he's 11. And I know it sounds cliche, but we also have two Boston Terriers. At any given time, they will make cameos. My apologies if there's some barking. I'm really good at going on mute quickly in these post-pandemic days. I was connected to the Asking Academy through a mutual friend named Kathy Fox, who actually has a great friendship with Kent from years and years and years ago. And I belong to an organization called Nevus Outreach. And in short, Nevus Outreach is a support group. It is a nonprofit that supports those that are affected with congenital melanocytic nevi, which is considered a rare disease by the NIH. And essentially, it is a person can be covered head to toe in birthmarks. You could have small, medium, large, giant, categorized as giant. And at first glance, it's people stare, people kind of rubberneck. People look, they ask questions, they might whisper. And, our goal is to help those affected with this condition have support, have someone to come to if they have any questions. We're connected to medical experts, so we help make those connections. We're also looking for a cure. And when I say we're looking for a cure, there's also another rare disease that's connected to congenital melanocytic nevi, and it's a neurological disease. So you can imagine if you have birthmarks all over your body, you probably have some inside your body as well, internally. And neurocutaneous melanocytosis, again, is another rare disease. That is where someone has birthmarks or lesions on their brain, and it can cause developmental challenges. It can, unfortunately, even cause those to pass away and develop cancer in the brain. So we have a wonderful organization that's very small, but we're very mighty. We are family members, we are friends, we are those that have these rare diseases, and even those associated to it. We have a very strong mission to help people understand what this condition is, to help those with the condition get connected, and to eventually find a cure. I'm actually the chair of the board of directors for Nevus Outreach. I'm so proud to hold this position. And my daughter, my 13-year-old that I referenced, she was born with this condition here in Boston, Massachusetts, which has the most, in my opinion, the most amazing hospitals. But when Riley was born, they'd never seen it before. That's how rare this condition is. And they didn't realize, we realized she had a neurological condition because we connected with Nevus Outreach and we had a lot of information and we knew what to look for. And she started having seizures at around 6 months old, and we knew we needed to get to the right doctors. So I have one more year as the chair of the board of directors, and I get to hand it off to my counterpart, who I'm not sure if he was able to make this call, but
He just
Wyatt.
jumped on. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
on the
Hi,
call.
Wyatt. Wyatt is our vice chair. He's my partner in crime. And we attended the Asking Academy in Tulsa with two other, one, our executive director, and also a constituent who is a grandmother of one of our Nevus owners, as we call those who have this condition. And you know, we got a lot out of going to Asking Academy. I wish we would have gone earlier, but to be honest with you, this was the right time for us when we went. So any more?
All right.
Is that it? A good high
Yeah.
level overview? Okay.
Oh yeah, it's
Okay.
great. And I'll say, as you know, as being at that summit, it was awesome to get to know your team, to hear about the organization, and when Jenna says they're family and friends, and you know, all on the same page. That's exactly how I was going to say. You guys are family, and it was fun to get to know you and laugh and cry and learn. And it was a pleasure.
Cry, but it was good
Pleasure
tears.
having you. Yes, beautiful tears.
Thank
Sometimes
you.
tears of joy and sometimes tears of emotion, just having your heart moved, and it was awesome. And so you referenced the Asking Academy. That's what we're talking about today. Kent, will you just tell us in a nutshell, what is the Asking Academy?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. And Jenna, thank you so much for carving time out to be here today. And what a great room of colleagues and friends we have today. In a nutshell, the Asking Academy is a very intensive, extended training program. Primarily what we do is equip fundraising leaders, both professionals and volunteers, to effectively collaborate and constructively ask for large gifts to fund the mission of organizations like Nevus Outreach and so many others that are on the call today. Rather than theory or framework, in the Asking Academy, we really practice actual conversations that you'll be having with very specific different types of prospects and donors. And again, we're really seeking to do one thing, and that is we measure success this way, and that is helping donors make well-informed decisions. And so rather than the idea of some way to trick or force people into doing things they don't want to do, we're not in that business. But it's kind of the antidote to the idea of somebody says, well, you know, give me a couple dozen names and I'll make a few calls. And that's a good way to not raise significant dollars. And so again, like Jenna said, you know, ideally, the teams in the Asking Academy are 4, 5, or 6 individuals. Ideally, they're equally split between volunteers and professionals, CEOs, development directors, major gift officers, planned gift officers, and so forth. And part of it is independent, and part of it is very, as Jenna discussed, on-site, in person, dive into the deep end and really go to work. Aaron, did I miss any big pieces that you want to mention?
No, not that I want to mention, but after giving us that, of course, you created the Asking Academy. It's your creation, so it's very easy for you to talk about it and share about it. But part of the reason we had Jenna on the call is we want to hear from someone who got to not facilitate and lead it, but got to attend. And so, Jenna, why don't you share with the group, as you know, from that attendee perspective, maybe your experience or a couple of your top takeaways from the Asking Academy?
Sure. When we attended the Asking Academy, we read a book, and then we received a binder that had so much information and great resources that we were able to take notes and then leave with and be able to digest and put it into action. But my top takeaways were actually the big 3. So when I think about the importance of conversation, and that goes to building relationships as well. You know, spending time to talk about how important it is to have very intentional conversations that help guide both the organization and those that you're speaking to about raising funds. You know, this is the next one is long-term, right? So you're building these relationships and these conversations to hopefully have a long-term partnership with your donors and continue to share, continue to thank them, continue to engage, continue to help move the mission forward. And it's a long-term, I always talk about the long game, but this is a long-term commitment on both sides. And really always driving everything back to your mission. Mission is so important for Nevus Outreach. It's what we do, it's who we are. We actually open all of our board meetings reading our mission. Our committees are starting to do this as well. And when I think about sharing the mission in those conversations, I get to listen to what the mission means to our community, because I know what it means to me. And I learn from our community when I talk about the mission and when I listen about the mission, more importantly. And you know, the other takeaway that I got from this was how to prepare, and the language that is used in fundraising is very different. I'm in logistics, I'm a shipping, I'm that import export person that people joke about. Like, oh yeah, she's in imports and exports. So fundraising for me is a different language, and it's not overwhelming. And the takeaways I got from this, the book and also the binder, extremely helpful. And networking, I have to say, I really enjoyed the group that was in Tulsa with us, from a soccer club to, you know, an amazing organization that helps the homeless. And I really think they appreciated Nevus Outreach's story as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I really enjoyed the opportunity to network outside of Boston and even outside of our Nevus Outreach community. So I appreciated the community that we had those couple days. And the food was amazing. I do have to say that. Being from the Northeast, the food was amazing in Tulsa.
Hey, Jenna, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay.
What was the worst thing for you about the Asking Academy or the summit?
So the worst, I wouldn't, so that's a harsh word, but I would say when I think about this, I had to leave a little early. My flight departed about an hour before the summit ended. And I really wish I could have stayed for that last hour. And I kick myself for having an earlier flight.
Well, that's so nice. If that's the worst thing that ever happens to you, you got a really good life going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest with you, what was great about the summit was we had some tough conversations within our group. But that's a good thing because we care so much. And sometimes you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable again, right? We talked about that during the summit. And so, you know, our party of four, we got a lot done, and had some tough, but also some very positive conversations as well. So it was, we really got a lot out of this. So thank you to you guys.
Well, I want to say this, you brought a lot. And in fact, that's one of the things that I really love about the summit. And you mentioned the collegiality that occurs with leaders of other organizations. And for me, that's probably my greatest point of satisfaction, is watching these connections and people come alongside each other. And, you know, here's something I'm grappling with, you know, have you ever dealt with that? How do you handle it? So yeah, thanks for being there. Thanks for being here. And by the way, later on, we're going to have an opportunity for some Q&A. And so I hope you have some really challenging questions that Jenna can answer.
Happy to help.
But where do we go first, Aaron?
Well, Jenna had mentioned a resource, and it's up there on the screen. She has her book, which we were talking about before before we opened up, as we were touching base and doing sound checks and whatnot. But asking about asking, this book written by Kent Stroman, it contains the philosophy that we go over in the Asking Academy, mastering the art of conversational fundraising. And that's a big part of the Asking Academy, is introducing the conversational aspect to fundraising. And so just as a recommended resource, if you don't have the book, drop a line in the chat if you want to order one, asking about asking, and I'll send you a link. It's also on Amazon, but really good kind of foundation to fundraising, especially with those major or mega gifts. So wanted to recommend that resource. Of course, if you, for all the attendees who go to the Asking Academy, this is part of the welcome packet. You get a copy of the book. There's some reading that we do on the front end, so we're all on the same page. But excellent resource there. And this isn't on the slides, but I'll say one of probably my favorite moment in the Asking Academy, when it specifically with Nevus Outreach and their team, I think after the first day and then after dinner, the team was just hanging out in the grand room at the Post Oak Lodge, having some conversation, and the conversation turns strategic. And there was some really cool progress that was made in the in-between time. And I don't remember how long you guys were out there talking, but there were some big decisions made for the organization, some big steps forward. And I got to be there for a lot of that. And it was fun just to hear you guys put into practice some of the concepts and see how it led to real steps forward. So,
well, we got to pick their brain too, selfishly. We got to pick both of your brains. So worked out.
Yeah, but there is a real good serendipity that happens, in breaks and meals, and like Aaron was mentioning there in the great room of the lodge. Lots of fun. And one of the questions was, what's designed into the Asking Academy? It's one thing for us to talk about dramatically changing your fundraising results, right? So we want to change our results. We want to have better results, but ultimately what we want to do is advance the mission. And so you'll notice one of the things we put on the screen is just changing the culture. And there are two cultures that the Asking Academy is designed to impact. One is in the boardroom, and that is to help shift the thinking about ways board members can be involved. I'm going to make a contrast. Philip is on the Philip Wright, Scout executive. Scouts do what nobody else can do successfully, and that is raise millions and millions and millions of dollars with popcorn. And most of our missions are not going to be advanced with popcorn sales. Okay. Scouting USA for sure. And so a lot of times what happens is people will sign up for the wrong thing. And what they do doesn't impact them, doesn't impact donors, doesn't impact the trajectory of the mission. And so we really want to engage the boardroom. And then secondly, the C-suite, the CEO, the CDO, CPO, CVO, et cetera, et cetera. We want those chiefs to have a different perspective on what success looks like, and how we can be successful as an organization. And that's why we use call teams. One of the things that we're very focused on is that when somebody's sitting down with a donor or a prospective donor, it's not just the fundraiser, but there's also a volunteer in the room. We call it the peer, that person who on some level, they're not an employee. They may or may not be a board member, but they're the person who comes alongside and kind of gives the relational validation and really helps advance the connection as we move forward. So the second thing we put on the screen at this point is we really address mindset. And Jenna, I remember there were some light bulb moments with you and your team as we started thinking how we approach others with fundraising does a lot in terms of reflecting do we have an abundance mentality or do we have a scarcity mentality? And whichever we go into the room with, it's contagious and other people will catch it. And so one of the ways that the abundance mentality is expressed is with the use of this thing that we call the gift plan or the gift chart. If we're going to succeed, we need to raise X number of dollars of gifts of certain size if we're going to get to the goal. And so that tool, we really teach some very practical ways on how we can use it internally before we use it externally and lift people's sights. The third thing we wanted to mention is the whole thing about being comfortable versus being anxious. And I wish I could say with confidence that after the Asking Academy, you're not going to have any moments of anxiety. That's not my experience. Jenna, I don't know if that's your experience, but it's not the matter of escaping anxiety, but how can we be comfortable while we're uncomfortable? And really, preparation is the key to that. And Jen, I appreciated when you mentioned earlier the whole idea of preparation and even having our own language down. One of the things that we do is practice voicing things that initially maybe aren't familiar, but the more we repeat a thing, the more comfortable we get with it. In fact, oh my goodness, this will be a test. So one of the sayings that we use throughout the Asking Academy, repeated often, starts like this: the most important part about a donor call is not what you say, but Jenna, you want to finish it? It's, oh, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We just talked about this. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
Put her
so
on the spot.
We just, Wyatt, can I get a lifeline? We just
Yeah.
talked about this.
So I'm going to
You
repeat
can.
again. Yeah, there we go. Go, Wyatt. What is it?
It's what you hear.
Right. The most important
you.
part about a donor call is not what you say, it's what you hear. And so what we say invites the prospect to share what's on their mind and in their heart. And then once we hear what we hear, that's what really becomes transformative. Not what we tell people. It's not the telling academy, it's the asking academy, of course. Anyhow, and then the last thing on the screen right now is confidence. We become confident by practicing. And one of the things, everybody comes into the Asking Academy having strategically identified 8 top prospects. And there's some unique descriptions of each of those. And then by the time we walk out of the summit at the end of the second day, we have not just talked about, but we've actually practiced and done some very constructive role play. And so anyhow, just wanted to share that. And one of the questions people say, why do we train so hard? And I love this quote from the United States Navy SEALs. They say, under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You sink to the level of your training. That's why we train so hard. And I don't know about you, but I am really grateful that the U.S. Navy SEALs train and train and train and train so they can execute their mission flawlessly. And we take that same philosophy, and that is we equip, we train, we practice, so that when the pressure comes on and we sink to the level of our training, that level is not a low level, but it's a high level. And it's just so much fun to see the results that come on the heels of that. In more information, you can at any time you can go to askingacademy.com and find out more details, contact information, and learn about the experiences of people like Jenna, who, my goodness, Aaron, it's 10 years. We're having our 10-year celebration this spring, and lots of people have benefited and advanced their missions.
Yes. I dropped the website in the chat as well, and during the chat, when you threw out the teaser, okay, most important donor call is not what you say. We had Michael Sikora drop in and answer at first. It's what you hear. So
Mike.
Mike's in Bartlesville. So Mike, for getting it right, you how about you get a free Chipotle, or no, there's no Chipotle in Bartlesville. How about Chick-fil-A on us as your door prize? And if Kent can't do it, next time I'm in town, I'll buy your lunch. So good job. In fact, Mike, do you know that because you were at the Asking Academy Express, correct?
Oh, that's right. Man, that was a year ago almost.
So up on the screen, you'll see we have 2 versions of the Asking Academy. One is the classic, and that's the one Jenna was at with her team, Nevus Outreach. The other one is the Express, and the difference of these is one is an in-person experience. That's Asking Academy Classic, Asking Academy Classic. It's a 5-month program. There's 1 month of kind of pre-preparation. We have our summit, which is 2 days on site. And then there's 4 months of coaching and mentoring that follow the Asking Academy Classic. So very in-depth, 5-month experience. Our next one is in April. So if your team could benefit with a little more revenue and donations, we should be talking about that. But we also have the Asking Academy Express, which is our virtual version. This is, it's 2 mornings, I want to say from essentially 8 to noon, maybe 8 to 11:30. It's just those 2 days. So it's not, you don't get the full 5-month experience, but it's condensed, little more geared towards individuals, whereas a classic is designed to bring an entire team to the Asking Academy, and you get to learn and grow together as a team. So 2 variations, one's in April, one is in May. Again, if you want to share this with your team, whether it's your board, your fundraising team, or other staff, I dropped the link in the chat. And if you personally just want a follow-up call and want to talk more about how this might work with your organization, just drop in the chat either the word classic or express, and that'll trigger me to give you a personal follow-up phone call if you want to talk about some of the Asking Academy and what is coming up and how you might get involved. So those are what's coming up. We did want to give a good amount of time just to do some Q&A or Q&R, question and response. We don't have all the answers, but we can respond to all the questions. And feel free to, if you have a question for Jenna, feel free to drop that in the chat box. Of course, Kent and I will be happy to field questions as well. So any questions about the Asking Academy, maybe the experience going through, what you might expect, maybe Ken said something you want to hear a little more about, feel free to drop those in the chat and we will field those right now. It's about 10:27. Yeah, we still got 20 minutes. So who has a question for us today?
First question, and Jenna, maybe you've got a question too. If they're hard questions, we'll pass them to Aaron. Any easy ones, I'll take.
I know one question I had before we attended the Academy was, what did the follow-up look like, the team meetings and the coaching that occurred afterwards? And we found those to be hugely impactful for our teams to regroup, to prepare. Kent and Aaron come with very intentional requests each time. They're very prepared to help us, to challenge us, to drive conversations. They're 30-minute meetings, so it's not like this huge chunk of time, but it allows us to regroup and really pick the brains of the experts as we still continue to learn from our own processes. So.
Yeah, is there anything that you would you'd say that you'd like to see more of? Anything that's been helpful that you think might be amplified going forward?
I would say the maybe, I don't want to say the hardest part about the summit, but for lack of better words, the hardest part about the summit was practicing. So
Okay.
I really would have probably enjoyed a little bit more and there was a lot of practice. We had a lot of opportunity to practice, but maybe a little bit more of that would be great.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you guys sat desk side, let's say that in my other world, but you sat with us during those practices and helped guide us and challenge us. It was really helpful, and showed us that how important preparation is.
Well, good point. And yeah, we find that the results are rarely better than the plans. And so, yeah, we put a lot of time and effort into that planning process. Rachel has a question. She says, as a very young organization, we're learning how to increase board of directors engagement and creating an atmosphere where all feel personal responsibility to partake in fundraising efforts. Boy, anybody else identify with Rachel? My guess is actually just do click a reaction, raise hand or thumbs up if you can identify with that. And you know, Rachel, what you're talking about really is one of the primary motivations behind forming the Ask Ken Academy. So many times we ask people in boards to be willing to do a thing. You know, who's willing to help with fundraising? And of course, the implication is if you're on the board, you want to help with fundraising. So everybody, yeah, they raise their hand. So what did they just say? I'm willing to help with fundraising. But then we don't define it. We don't equip it. And a month later, we come back in a room, nothing has happened, and everybody's frustrated. And so, again, one of the things that we love to do is to make very specific plans, preparations, expectations, and points of engagement where what I like to say is I want a board member. So Jenna is a great example here as a board member. You know, I want Jenna to do what only she can do. I don't want to put Jenna on a task that anybody can do, because so let's see, Aaron, you are a parent of teenagers. Jenna, you're a parent of teenagers. If it's something that teenagers will do for free or do for pizza, that's not the right assignment for a board member. Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah. I want board members to do what only that individual can do. And so when you take, you know, Jen was talking about logistics and her professional life and her very unique background, she brings qualities into the boardroom for the benefit of Nevus Outreach that nobody else in the world brings. And that's where I want her to work. And that's her area of greatest comfort. So anyhow, yeah, I see lots of thumbs up. Does somebody else have another question, a thought, comment that you want to share? Oh, let's see. Would you share some great ways to equip your board to fundraise? So, Jenna, any comments that you want to add to that? And then afterwards, Aaron will jump in, and then I will as well.
Sure. We're actually at a great, thank you for that question, first of all. We're at an interesting spot where our board is very diverse with regards to skill set. And I hugely value that as a board, as the chair of board of directors. For some of them, there isn't a comfort in having the conversation to ask for funding. And I appreciate those that can say, this isn't my skill set, versus those who just won't answer the questions sometimes. Because we have medical professions, we have data analysts, myself in sales, you know, Wyatt also has this great outward facing role that he has in his career. Like there's some of us that are very comfortable and some of us that aren't. So, you know, it really takes to creating options of fundraising that are comfortable for all. So yes, there will be some that want to participate in the actual asking. There will be some that say, can you just give me the tools and I can share my story with my own network. I'm only comfortable with maybe my family members and a few people outside of that circle. And can you send me the link and I can do it from here. Some board members are just really comfortable with the Facebook fundraising, which is to click the nonprofit button and find Nevus Outreach and fundraise that way. You know, we also have grassroots opportunities where our community members can create their own fundraiser. We've had some that have been, you know, selling cheesecakes or selling, you know, bracelets to support Nevus Outreach. And I think it's really about having the conversation about finding what their individual skill set is and what their comfort level is for fundraising when it comes to the board. Because sometimes you even ask, it's helpful to ask, well, is there anyone in your family that would help do this with you, right? Because when you feel like it's on your own as a board member, on top of your already existing tasks for the board, whether it is leading a committee or leading an initiative, it can feel like a lot. So as the chair of the board of director, I do feel a sense of responsibility to help make it easy and customized for the board, because I think that then echoes down to our community and we can make that scalable for our community to fundraise in various ways. But when it comes to actually the asking committee and having a campaign, and I don't like to say the word campaign, but for lack of better words, a campaign, we did ask for board level commitment. First, it was that Nevus Outreach would be your #1 donation for the next 3 years. We didn't say what it had to be monetarily. We just asked that it's your #1 you know, foundation that you're funding. And 2, we did ask for a commitment for the next 3 years. Again, we didn't put any guidelines around what the number had to be, just what they were comfortable with as a board. Our organization does believe that 100% board commitment to Nevus Outreach fundraising for the organization, but also for this campaign, it's hugely impactful because we are such a small organization that to have the 9 to 10 to 11 of us at any given time have a commitment, it speaks volumes to our constituents and our community. So long answer, but I really like to understand what our board members are comfortable with, but then the campaign was a huge opportunity for us.
Yeah, very good. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's a big principle that I think is underlying of Tori's question. Would you share some great ways to equip your board to fundraise? And when we talk about not just boards, but all volunteers, a principle that we instill is to assume if you haven't trained them or equipped them to do it, they don't know how, or they can't do it. And especially if you've been in the fundraising field for a long time, sometimes you don't realize how much you know, and what may seem natural and intuitive for you is not natural, intuitive for your board. And so I would start off with the principle, put into place some training to equip your board to fundraise. There's another organization that was at the Asking Academy in November, and their mission involves helping educate those who are uneducated, to help feed some of the hungry. And I'll just take their food pantry, for example. They have volunteers who can help walk guests through there to get food, but there had to be that training. How much food are we allowed to give out? How do we, how many sacks can we fill up? What do they check out? Do we carry the bags out to their car for them? What's the process here? And there's a training involved in that small volunteer role. And you think, well, of course, that's part of their mission. They need to give that training. But a lot of times with the board, it's common for the CEO or just for the organization to expect, well, they're on the board, they know how to fundraise, right? I mean, they're a board member. And that's not always the case. Most of the time, it's not the case at all. And so providing the training is so important. And I'll kind of do a little bleed over to Rachel's next question. But one of the things we do at the Asking Academy is we show up with real prospect names and we role play. We sit down and go, okay, what is the conversation going to be like? Let's practice it, so we're not using these words for the first time in a life scenario with the existing donor or potential donor, but we're practicing having the conversations. And it's hard to see on the book cover, but there's the 10-step staircase, and the 10th step is making an ask for money. There's 9 other conversations or questions to be had before then. And when we practice those, we get comfortable, because we're not going to come in straight out of the gate saying, hey, you have some money, I would like it. Controversial fundraising. We're not controversial fundraising, we're conversational fundraising. Let's have a conversation. Let's ask questions. Let's have some strategic listening, which we know only follows strategic questions. And there's some great questions in here, very strategically worded to help engage that conversation. So I would say, speaking to Tori's question specifically, what are some great ways to equip your board to fundraise? I think if you have a plan and sit down and practice it with them, don't send your board out to hit the roads without having some practice and some training beforehand, so that there's a comfort level and confidence level. Again, the Navy SEAL quote is great too. You're in those moments when you catch a curveball or you hit an obstacle in the road, you're not going to rise to occasion, you're going to sink to the level of your training. So what is it that we are doing in our organization to train our volunteers to engage in fundraising?
Yeah, and actually, Aaron, let me jump in on the terminology there, because there was another question later on. Tori asks equip, somebody else asked training. And here's what I found. And it's not universal, but it's close to it. Board members don't want to be trained. I'm on the board. I don't need to be trained, right? And so there's an implication just in the use of the word. And the other thing is, if I am in the board member and in the board and I admit that I need to be trained, then that presumes that I'm untrained, and so I'm not qualified for the job. So we recommend substituting the term equipping and to use that as an inclusive term. One of the things that we want to do as a board is to become better equipped to be involved in this way. So back to Tori's question, great training. I want to equip people to make introductions. And so rather than send everybody out solo, we want you to go raise money. Actually, I don't want people to go raise money because they're not equipped to. But what I would love them to do, so using Jenna as an example, and let's see, the next person on my screen is Philip. So Philip is a very wealthy philanthropist. And what I want to do is ask Jenna, since you and Philip know each other so well, excuse me, I'm going to pick on me. Since Philip and I know each other so well, he doesn't know the organization. I would love to introduce him to the board chair. Could I set that up? So as a board member, if all I do is introduce a key leader to a potential funder, that by itself is leveraging celebrity. Now, Jenna, you didn't mention earlier in your self-introduction what a celebrity you are, but as a board chair, there's a celebrity factor. Rachel asked a question. As CEO, as founder, there's a celebrity factor, and we want to leverage that. So first of all, make an introduction, then secondly, ask. Aaron mentioned some strategic questions that we want to teach people to ask. Here's another one, thank. I will turn people loose. Would you call this person, and I'm not going to tell you an amount, but they made a very generous gift yesterday. Would you just call them as a board member, say thank you? So that's a way somebody can be involved as a board member. And another thing is just to advocate. As you go about your work, would you just mention Nevus Outreach and talk about how important that is in our family, in our community, in our society, make people aware. And so in a lot of ways, that kind of leads us to Rachel's question, is anyone really comfortable with these conversations? And I think you answer that, no, they're not. And so what do? We frame it up. Let's practice. When we do get to that coffee conversation, what am I going to talk about? Well, the most important thing about a donor call isn't what you say, it's what you hear. So question is, what am I going to ask about? Introduce the organization, introduce the mission, introduce the vision, introduce the passion. I'm curious, do you know anybody who's ever been impacted by a rare disease? And then that opens up conversation, right, Jenna?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's more than 6,000 rare diseases in the world. We can absolutely relate to that. And
Wow.
It's more of not a fundraising conversation at all at that point. Right?
Yeah.
Connecting
and
us.
We've got a number of other really good questions in the chat room. And I think Jenna and Aaron and I are going to be able to stay over for a few minutes. So if you have other questions you want to be answered, feel free to stay on. But in the meantime, Aaron, what do we have coming up next time?
A month from today, we have our next 47-minute webinar. I don't know if you guys know Amy from the Capital Campaign Toolkit, but she's going to be our guest, sharing some secrets on capital campaigns.
Oh, can I get invited to that one?
Yeah, I'll invite. I'll invite everyone on the call.
I know who Amy is.
Okay.
Oh, awesome.
Actually, yeah, she's in your part of the neck of the woods. So
I'd like to listen. Thank you.
And by the way, earlier, her partner in founding the Capital Campaign Toolkit, Andrea Kilstead, was also on our call. She had to leave to go to something else. But anyhow, if you don't know Amy or Andrea, you're really missing out. And if you do know, you'll want to hear more. So I've had the good fortune of knowing Amy for, my goodness, over a decade. And she doesn't like it when I say this, but I'm going to tell you, Amy is brilliant, and you're going to want to listen in on her secrets. So yeah, a month from today.
Okay.
And I'll send out invites to that, email, LinkedIn, social media. So be on the lookout for that. And as Kent mentioned, 1047 is coming up pretty quick. So we're going to honor the time frame. But if anyone wants to hang out afterwards, there are a few other questions still lingering that haven't been answered. We'll gladly stay on the call and make sure we address those questions. So hang on to that. But and we're a few minutes early, but let's go ahead and go to the next slide and just say a big thank you. I want to thank Jenna for being here and giving of her time and sharing some of her experience and wisdom with us today. So thank you, Jenna. And
we want to say a huge thank you for taking time out, and what you're seeing on the screen right now, if you look at that smile, that's a trademark Jenna Connors smile, and will brighten anybody's day. And anyhow, I think at one point we had 35 people on today's call in the room, and on their behalf, I want to say a thank you, not just for sharing your smile, but your thoughts and your heart, what you do for people with rare disease, particularly through Nevus Outreach. Thank you so much for doing that, and for doing it in such an inspiring way.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity as well. I'm very glad we connected.
Yeah,
You're stuck with me for a very long time.
Yeah, so we're going to hang out for a few minutes, and there was one question in particular. Let's see, Aaron, which one of those questions should we tackle as we in these closing moments?
You know, let's see, I'm scrolling through the questions. Some of the questions have the common theme of a board that seems to be unmotivated to even engage in the equipping process, or I call fun training. It's more from I think from my athletic background, I like to train. But when the board member or board in general is hesitant to engage in trying some new processes, techniques, learning new things, what would you say in response to those questions?
Yeah, so I have some thoughts, but first, Jenna, anything that you want to mention in terms of I don't know if you've ever seen this in your organization, but reluctance to be equipped. Any thoughts on that?
I would say we do, and this is again from the board of director perspective, right? From that group. Okay, thank you for the clarification. I would say, and we do run into some reluctance because it's about comfort and skill set. So what we've started to do is we were intentional when it came to who our committee would be that would go to the Asking Academy. We knew we only wanted 1 to 2 board members. And we knew we wanted an executive director, but we then also wanted a community member to join. And that's been hugely successful for our board to see her impact, her excitement, her drive. We really found someone that's in our community that wants to help lead the fundraising initiative with us. And she actually doesn't want to be a board member. She would like to be someone that continuously works on fundraising. So sometimes it's serendipity, to use that word again, but you do have to look within your community and bring on someone to support committees. And I do believe that the fruits of our labor will pay out, and that will show the board of directors, when you have a team that is locked in, and it's not all board members, the power of fundraising. And then I believe you will see that the board members will relax a little bit about the intensity it might feel about fundraising, and that they don't have to do it all by themselves. We're here as a committee that have gone to the Asking Academy and received this training and are practicing. We're the ones that can help do kind of the heavy lifting, not the actual board members themselves. But there are a variety of ways to do fundraising, not just through through this particular campaign. So we're just trying to make it easy for everyone. Again, I think you have a board that is committed to understanding, sorry, I've got a glare here, to understanding the need for your funds. I think that helps drive it as well. We were in a position, to be very candid with this group years ago, where our doors were about to close. And when that message was sent, it was received, because so many of us are so connected emotionally to the organization that we stepped right up. Right. So I think sometimes that transparency can really bring out the best in people as well. If you're having struggles, to be transparent about it and think about how you convey those messages. And I know Kent and Aaron would help guide that conversation as well.
Well, and here's one thing, and I think maybe we'll kind of wrap up with this, but where we have reluctance, I think it's helpful to consider the alternative.
Yeah.
And so, Jenna, you gave kind of a dramatic thing. We can keep doing what we've been doing, and we can just go away.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that kind of makes it real. And so a lot of times we say, well, I'm reluctant to do what it takes for us to increase our revenue. Okay, so what if we don't? Are we content always doing what we've always done and always getting what we've always got, which, by the way, that's an okay alternative. But here's one of the things that I find so many times in boardrooms. I did not show up to just maintain the status quo.
Right.
And so as an organization, what are the needs of the mission? What will it take for us to achieve that? And if doing the same thing will achieve it, then we probably shouldn't do anything different. And so anyhow, again, think in terms of alternatives. And then the other thing is, man, who knows Pareto's law, 80-20 rule, right?
Right.
I would say 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And that's pretty much true in the boardroom as any group. I'm not picking on board members, but let's say it is. Somebody says, we got 10 people on the board, 2 of them are doing all the work. If that's the case, then we're probably about on par. If we have aspirations that are different, let's say we want to see 40% of the people do 60% of the work. Who's it going to be? So anyhow, break it down, make it simple, and make room for people who want to exit. Make room for them to exit. That will open up a seat for us to recruit somebody to do specific things in the boardroom.
Recruiting's huge. We're having that conversation all the time. It isn't once a year we review it. Every month or two, our board is, have you talked to someone? Have you heard of someone? Maybe the right way for them to get involved is to first be on a committee, then join the board. And just so that this group is aware, our nonprofit is basically a party of one. We have one employee. We have some contract workers that our budget covers, but we're small. Like we are really heavily reliant on volunteer work.
Yeah.
Oops, excuse me. I have to take a call, guys. I'm so sorry.
Okay. You're fine.
Hey, Jenna, thanks again for being here. We'll wrap up with this thought. Jenna talked about recruiting board members, and that it's not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process. I'm speaking at a national conference next month. The topic I'm addressing specifically is recruiting a high-performing board of directors. And if that's something that you have interest in, check in with us. In the meantime, those of you who have stayed 6 minutes beyond the 47-minute mark, kudos. Thank you so much for being a part of this process. We look forward to seeing you 1 month from today when we'll get Capital Campaign Secrets from Amy Eisenstein. With that, I want to say a happy Valentine's Day. Look forward to seeing you next time. Catch you then.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.